You remember the feeling, that exact feeling. The weight of a stick in your hand that wasn't a stick anymore. It was a sword, a wand, a laser blaster from a galaxy that only existed because you said it did. You stood in your backyard, or your friend's yard, or that empty lot behind the grocery store, and you weren't just playing, you were building. Kingdoms, universes, entire mythologies with their own rules, their own heroes, their own wars. And then one day, without ceremony, without even noticing, you stopped. You walked inside. You never came back. And here's the thing nobody tells you. That kingdom is still there. Not in your backyard, in your head. Buried so deep you forgot it was real. But it's screaming. And you can hear it every time you scroll past an old cartoon thumbnail. Every time a song from 1987 hits different at 2 in the morning. Every time you feel that ache you can't name. You thought you forgot. You didn't. You just learned to ignore it. Until now. Let's cut through the noise. Nostalgia isn't about old games or retro cartoons or your dad's vinyl collection. That's the surface. The easy answer. The thing people say when they don't want to dig deeper. Because if we're being honest, really honest, nostalgia is about loss. It's about the person you used to be before the world taught you to stop believing in magic. Before you learned that kingdoms don't pay rent. Before someone told you to grow up, get serious, stop wasting time. You didn't just lose your childhood. You lost the version of yourself that could create meaning out of nothing. A cardboard box wasn't trash. It was a spaceship, a fortress, a portal. You didn't need a budget or a team or permission. You just needed imagination. And then, somewhere between middle school and your first job, someone convinced you that imagination was for kids. That it didn't matter. That it wasn't productive. So you buried it. You buried the kingdom. And you told yourself it was gone. But here's the psychological truth they don't teach you. Nothing is ever really gone. It's just waiting. Let's go back. Childhood isn't just a phase. It's the foundation. Between the ages of 3 and 12, your brain is a sponge soaking up meaning, identity, and emotional texture from everything around you. The cartoons you watched, the toys you played with, the stories you invented, they weren't distractions. They were blueprints. Psychologists call it formative identity construction. You were learning who you were by deciding who you wanted to be. A hero, a rebel, a dreamer, a fighter. And the media you consumed? It wasn't passive. It was active. Every episode of your favorite show, every action figure, every storybook, it gave you language for emotions you didn't have words for yet. Courage, friendship, loss, betrayal. You learned about the world through metaphor, through symbols, through characters who felt more real than half the adults in your life. And here's where it gets dark. Those early years also taught you what to hide. What parts of yourself were acceptable. What dreams were too big. What feelings were too much. So you started building 2 kingdoms. One in your backyard, out loud, with your friends. And one inside your head, silent, secret, yours alone. The outside kingdom eventually crumbled. But the inside one? It never left. It's still there, still building, still whispering. Fast forward, you're an adult now. You've got bills, responsibilities, a life that looks nothing like the one you imagined when you were 8. And yet, you find yourself clicking on a video essay about retro Nintendo games. You binge an entire series about 80s horror movies you've never even seen. You buy a vintage band t-shirt for $70 even though you can't really afford it. Why? Because it feels like something. In a world that feels increasingly hollow, increasingly performative, increasingly algorithmic, the past feels real. It feels textured. It feels human. Modern media is polished, sterile, designed by focus groups and optimized for engagement metrics. But that old cartoon you loved? It was weird. It was rough around the edges. It took risks. It didn't care if it offended someone's algorithm. It just existed. And that existence feels sacred now. Sacred because it's proof that once upon a time things were made with soul, with heart, with the understanding that kids deserved magic, not just content. So you chase it. You chase the high, the memory, the feeling of being small and safe and endlessly curious. You chase it because modern life doesn't offer that anymore. It offers productivity, optimization, hustle culture, but it doesn't offer wonder. So you dig up the past. You resurrect the kingdom, even if it's just for 7 minutes on YouTube. Even if it's just a glimpse. But here's the uncomfortable part. The part nobody wants to say out loud. The past you're remembering? It didn't exist. Not the way you think it did. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection. Your brain isn't a camera. It's an editor. It cuts out the boring parts, the painful parts, the parts that don't fit the narrative. You remember the magic. You don't remember the loneliness, the confusion, the fear, the fights your parents had in the next room while you played with your toys and pretended not to hear. You remember the cartoons. You don't remember the anxiety of Monday mornings, the bullies at school, the feeling of not fitting in. Your childhood wasn't perfect. It was complicated, messy, sometimes dark, but your brain smooths it over, turns it into myth, into legend, and you cling to that myth because the alternative is terrifying. The alternative is admitting that you're not nostalgic for the past. You're nostalgic for a version of yourself that never had to make hard choices, that never had to fail, that never had to grow up and realize that kingdoms don't last, that magic isn't real, that the world is cold and indifferent and nobody's coming to save you. So you bury yourself in nostalgia. You binge the old shows, you collect the vintage toys, you build shrines to a past that never existed because it's easier than facing the present. And the kingdom inside your head? It becomes a prison, a place you hide instead of a place you create from. So what do we do with this? What do we do with the kingdom we buried? With the child still screaming inside us? Here's the truth. Nostalgia isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. Nostalgia can be medicine. It can remind you of who you were before the world told you who to be. It can reconnect you to curiosity, creativity, play. But only if you're honest about it. Only if you stop pretending the past was perfect and start asking what it actually gave you. What did those cartoons teach you? What did those games show you about problem solving, about perseverance, about imagination? What did your childhood self know that your adult self forgot? Because here's the secret. The kingdom isn't dead. It's dormant. And you have the power to wake it up, not by retreating into the past, but by bringing the past forward, by giving yourself permission to play again, to create without purpose, to imagine without profit, to be silly, strange, sincere. The world will tell you that's childish. Let it. Because the alternative is becoming one of the people who killed their kingdom and spent the rest of their life mourning it. You built kingdoms in your backyard, then you buried them alive. But here's the thing about kingdoms. They don't die. They wait. They wait for you to remember, to dig them up, to stand in the wreckage and the dirt and the forgotten magic and say, I'm still here. The child you were is still inside you, not as a ghost, as a guide. And maybe, just maybe, the reason you keep clicking on videos like this one isn't because you're broken. It's because you're ready. Ready to stop mourning the past. Ready to start building again. Not in your backyard, in your life. So go ahead, pick up the stick. It's a sword again.